There are nearly 2,800 students on campus here at Point Loma. They go to class, hang out with friends, and do extracurricular activities. We see each other on campus doing things, but we don't see beyond and understand what each and every student goes through. Because everyone seems perfect, people on campus may seem alone with their issues, but that is not the case, and that is why we are discussing the topic of mental health on tonight's episode of The Beat.
No, I don't.
No, I actually haven't experienced anybody that has mental health illness on campus.
I do know people who have struggled with mental health.
Yeah, I've had some friends deal with those issues.
Yes, I think mental health has definitely affected many students here.
I have a couple friends here that have struggled with anxiety, depression.
I do know many people who struggle with mental health and anxiety.
Our first guest here with us tonight is Tim Hall, psychology professor and women's soccer coach. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks, Michelle. It's good to be here.
So to start off broadly, what has been your experience with students dealing with mental health issues on campus specifically?
Well, as you mentioned, there's 2,800 students, give or take, that attend here. And so with that number, there are all various types of issues that people deal with. And so Point Loma definitely is not exempt, even though sometimes we might feel like everybody here is doing well. It's just not the case. And there are many that are struggling, dealing with issues. And so it's definitely an issue that we have here at Point Loma.
How often do students come to you with their issues?
Sure. I'm honored to teach the Psychology 101 course, which is the required course for all freshmen. And we talk about things in that class that bring up these types of issues. It's a developmental type, a life a searching type class. And so with the context of that class, outside of class, I get many students that come and want to sit down privately and talk about something that maybe triggered in them when we were in class talking. And so I do get quite a few. Sometimes during the year, it just seems like there's many based on the finals week or whatever, if there's stress and anxiety or whatnot, but pretty steady current of flow all the way through the year.
And what kinds of things do the students come to you, like what are the different types of issues that they bring to your attention?
Well, you name it. You know, with that many students, as I think about all the things that have been shared with me in my office, you name it. It's hard to not hear a little bit of everything. So they are various. But you do hear a lot of students talking about anxiety, stress, the depression, emotional problems, different things like that. I also have the benefit to be able to refer students. I call myself the triage guy, where they can come in and sit and talk to me. But then when I feel like there's situations that are beyond what I should be addressing, I do send them and have a good referral base where we can get these students to places that are healthy for them.
Is there anything else that you would like to communicate to Point Loma students or students anywhere for that matter, that are struggling and dealing with mental health issues?
No, I think that's a great question. Here's what I want for students. I really want them to feel like there are places that are safe to go share. Now, I know we say that. Students have to trust that. They have to feel comfortable with that, or they won't come. So I do want them, first of all, to, if they feel like they have something that's going on in their lives, that they need to be honest about it at first. Realize that we do go to a campus like this, but not everybody here has it all together. Faculty and staff the same, we all don't. But then to come and talk about it and to be honest about it and to have a desire to want to get well and to take the steps. So I guess the biggest thing I would say is please don't suffer in silence. Try to find somebody that you trust, that you can talk to at least get the ball rolling so that you can take the steps to becoming well, or as well as you can possibly be. That's my big thing with students.
Thank you so much for sharing. Next, we'll be back soon with Dr. Jim Johnson and Delaney O'Keefe to talk more about this subject.
Take a break. Watch Point TV.
A lot of anxiety.
I personally struggle with it, and I know that a lot of my friends also do.
A lot of people who are very close to me are struggling with those things right now.
I've had a lot of friends that have experienced like mental health issues on campus.
I have a lot of people in my life that have dealt with mental health issues.
It has a huge effect on people, and it's something that's not talked about a lot at all on campus.
Here with us now is Jim Johnson, who is also a professor of psychology here at Point Loma. Thank you for being here with us.
Real joy. Thank you, Michelle.
So what has been your experience with the mental health of students on campus at Point Loma?
In a nutshell, I think we all personally often seek out people to talk to in crisis. So crisis intervention in kids' lives really brings a relationship for me with students. With Psych 101 and teaching that class and the other classes, students, we build a relationship. So there's a sense of trust. But I also, I think from my role as mentor, advisor to many of the students, besides just being a professor, out of that role comes a deepened trust and relationship. And so many of the issues in their life, mental health issues, come to bear when we talk out of those experiences. And I also am a referral source for the spiritual development and student development offices for kids who are needing a little bit of mental support and mental health issues. Habits and addictions that they're trying to get over, and so that's another source in which I make contact with students with mental health issues.
Why do you think so many students experience mental health issues?
Let me maybe just frame that question a little differently with a couple pieces of information. When we think about mental health issues on campus, we automatically think about normal and abnormal, particularly in the sense of behavior. Let me simplify that maybe for tonight in this discussion to get to the answer to your question, to talk about what does it mean to have normal, abnormal kind of emotional healthiness. So normal would be more on the end of emotional healthy and abnormal on the emotional unhealthy. Now, there aren't clear lines there, and it's very easy to see why there aren't clear lines. Sometimes because of the confusing roles comes from what happens typically with college students in nonconformity. Their desire to become who they really are, to be individual, and to work with that. And so in this sense of flow, I've come to realize that most of us are more what I would call moderately well-adjusted. And most college students on campus are moderately, they don't stand out with abnormal emotional health, unhealthy issues or emotional issues. But at the same time, those that do experience those come to bear. So thinking about that, then in the context of that, let me answer your question. I think the issue in terms of what brings them to the kinds of issues are issues with personal identity and mission or purpose. The questions we struggle with beginning way back in junior high do not go away in college and even in our adult life. Who am I and why am I here? Identity and purpose or mission in life. But underneath that, in trying to define mission and purpose and who they are, I think the overwhelming issue that brings kids into the light with mental health issues on our campus is the complexity of their life, the complexity of this world. That can be personal, those identity issues of who they are and what their purpose is, but also the information overload that they're responsible for, the expectations and pressures from home life, from the academic world, step up academically in college is very different than high school typically. It's not just doing the stuff. You have to think and know and process and apply. And then the spiritual dynamic in our environment here, the spiritual expectations and demands, those are very complex issues that affect our emotions. And so on that scale, even though we might be moderately well adjusted, there are times where we reach crisis and there's overload. And I think the stress issue and the overload is a big factor in that.
What kind of access that you know of do students have on campus for when they're struggling with mental health issues and they want to seek help?
Good question. The frame to understand those access points has to do with what I mentioned earlier, which I believe is relationship. The ability for us in transparency as professors, faculty, and staff. So what you'll see is that many students go first to someone they trust. And that's a very important piece. We have a wellness center on campus that is available with a scheduled ability to schedule actual clinical counseling with psychologists and therapists, which is very critical. We have ministries on campus, both in spiritual development and in student development, that work with developing core groups. Most of us with mental health, people with mental health issues thrive better in group situations than individual. So those ministry opportunities in student development and spiritual development really play a role. And then of course, there are always excellent resources in the community itself. And those of us in the field have those access. Wellness Center has access to outside referral sources as well. So there's good resources for our students.
Do you think that students on campus avoid seeking help because they're afraid of being judged or criticized?
Let me frame it this way. I think things that keep us from sharing the deep inside stuff with other people has to do with our own personal self-judgment, often in a negative way. But more importantly, framed with that, I think, is the concept of shame. We really do carry too much shame in this culture in terms of what we put on ourselves. But in the simplest terms, and trying to put it down into what really I think is important, I think this whole concept of being able to sense that this is what we should be. I'm in college, I should be able to handle this. So the shoulda, woulda kind of behavior that we put on ourselves probably is one of the biggest things that prevents people from going to risk the potential of, with a prof or a person that they trust, sharing what they really need to share in terms of their own mental health. And that woulda, shoulda, I should be able to handle, I should have this sense of control, I should have a strong enough ability to manage my life. That's a shame, self-negative image that kind of prevents people from coming. In this community, we should be a grace community. And if we are a true grace community, that means that we have what my wife calls being tastefully transparent. I can share out of my life with my classes, with students, things that I've experienced which are very similar to what they experience. And there's an ability to build that relationship and to move beyond that shame and that risk factor that might be too high for them to come and share.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Johnson. And coming up next is a student's perspective on this issue.
Take a break. Watch Point TV.
Our last guest tonight is Delaney O'Keefe, a junior child and adolescent development major here at Point Loma. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So what kinds of issues have you dealt with in the past and since you've been a student at Point Loma?
Well, when I was 13, I got diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And so those are two things that I have been dealing with for my entire life throughout my childhood. And I continue to experience through today.
And how have you dealt with these issues? Like, what kind of help have you sought?
As soon as I got diagnosed, I started going to therapy, and I also started taking antidepressant medication. Those two things have helped me so much, and it's helped me to be on a normal level. It hasn't made me extra happy or anything like that, but just to function on like a normal level. I lean really, really heavily on my faith, and I truly believe that my prayers have been answered by Jesus providing me with these opportunities through therapy and with medication to help me overcome these struggles that have been placed in my life.
Yeah. Were you ever afraid that you would be judged or criticized because of the issues that you've dealt with?
Yeah, there's always that fear of what other people are going to think of you, especially in regards to something like a mental illness. I think that there is a stigma around it, and I was afraid for a long time of what people would think. But at a certain point, I got used to the fact that it is a part of who I am, and once I was able to accept that as truth and as a important and special part of who I am, I was able to accept it for myself and therefore not care so much about what other people think. And I also realized that nobody really has as much of an opinion on it as I think that they do.
Yeah. And do you think here at Point Loma on our campus there's a negative stigma attached to mental health issues?
As a student at Point Loma, I've experienced an overwhelming sense of acceptance and love in regards to everything that I have dealt with. The one stigma that I have experienced is around medication, taking antidepressants. I've heard a lot of people say things like they're overused, they're not needed, they're a crutch, like just pray about it and you won't need to take medication. I just kind of take that with a grain of salt. I've heard it so much, and I really like to take that opportunity to explain to people how I lean on my faith and my prayers have been answered with this tool of medication to help me deal with.
Thanks so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell fellow students who might be struggling with mental health issues?
Yeah, I mean, I really just want to express that there are resources out there for everybody. There's the Wellness Center, and I also have a D group that is specifically geared toward talking about mental illness, dealing with mental illness as a college student and as a Christian. And so I would just want to say that there is hope and there are resources, and like, you're not alone.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
To those out there who feel like they're struggling with the things that we've talked about, reach out to whoever or wherever you need to and know that you are not alone. That's it for us tonight on The Beat. Good night.